my God. Oh. Dude, you went around the corner pedaling and I said a prayer for you. That was so gnarly. It's been a few years since our last downhill bike test. We realized we were way overdue to toss on a full face helmet, jump on a chairlift, and see what modern downhill bikes are capable of. Lucky for us, we had 5 companies step up and send us one of their current downhill bikes for us to smash as we please. Our goal at the end of summer is to pick our favorite based on speed, capability, fun, and of course a little bit of rider preference. Not everybody wants a bike park bike or a full-on race machine. By the end of our test, we're gonna see where each bike shines. No, that's cool. I'll finger gun all kinds of things. What's going on, everyone? I'm Jason Schroeder, and welcome to Vital MTB's Summer of Downhill. I don't like that. That feels dumb. What's going on, everyone? I'm Jason Schroeder, and welcome to Vital MTB's Summer of Downhill. Long travel, aggressive geometry, dual crown forks, and burly tires. No matter how much time passes, we're always craving the need for speed the downhill bikes provide.
My best World Cup finish was, I think, 71st place, Mount St. Anne 2006. Yeah. You got on the show, son. Back when they took 80 riders, I made the show. So counts. It counts.
How about you?
Better than Grizz.
Huh?
Is it better than Grizz?
Yeah.
No, my best result was 30th at MSA as well.
My best split time was 57th.
That's pretty good.
Bromont 09. I would have made the show in today's standards if had I not botched one turn.
To kick things off, we're going to start the downhill bike that has taken Bernard Kerr to the top step of Red Bull Hardline, as well as graced multiple World Cup podiums under Emily Siegenthaler, Pivot's Phoenix 2.9. Pivot launched the Phoenix 2.9 almost 2 years ago with a much more compact DW-Link rear suspension design built around 29-inch wheels. Designed and tested with their factory team at the World Cup level, the Phoenix 2.9 is no doubt a downhill race bike first and foremost. The frame is fully carbon, with most of the frame weight low in center for improved stability at speed. Frame details include 190 millimeters of rear wheel travel, integrated fork bump stops, internally routed cables, threaded bottom bracket, and 157 millimeter rear wheel spacing. For our test, Pivot provided their Phoenix 2.9 race build. This is Pivot's cheapest complete build option for the Phoenix 2.9, but still comes in at $6,999 US. Build spec is highlighted by a Fox Factory 40 fork, Fox Factory Float X2 air shock, Maxxis Ascii Max Grip tires front and rear, and a full Shimano Z drivetrain and brakes. Stock Cockpit components include a 20mm rise pivot handlebar. Pivot also specs their own direct mount stem, which is adjustable between 46 and 49 millimeters. 2 higher end build kits do exist, as well as 2 frame-only options. Up front, the Phoenix 2.9 has a 62.5 degree head angle matched with a fairly low 337 millimeter bottom bracket. Pivot recommended a size large frame, which has a 460 millimeter reach to best match our test rider heights of 5'10" and 6 feet. Despite the popular trend of longer bikes, the Phoenix 2.9 lands pretty middle of the road with an overall wheelbase of 1,278 millimeters. In an effort to make the Phoenix 2.9 fun and flickable in bike park environments, Pivot chose shorter 443mm chainstay lengths across all sizes. It is worth noting for riders choosing a small or extra large frame that the rear end could feel longer or shorter relative to reach. With the goal of offering riders a bike that is more fun to toss around or jump, the Phoenix 2.9 in size medium and large will likely live up to this hype.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Years ago, I remember riding like the original Phoenix. It was like the Iron Horse Sunday kind of bike. And that was my favorite downhill bike of like the 26-inch era. And then the year after, I think everything went 27.5. So I've had my eye on this particular bike as it's evolved through the generations with Bernard and Eddie Masters and that whole Pivot team developing it. So I'm thoroughly excited to ride this bike.
Our Phoenix 2.9 test bike was the nicest bike in our test pool, and we did enjoy getting to see if the grass really is greener when you spend some extra dough on your build. For fish?
Bass fishermen. That's all park skill.
We're bike riders, not fishermen. Oh my God. It's not even that heavy, I'm just that weak.
35, 35, 10, 15, 35,
I'm shaking. For me, when I got on this bike, it being a 460 millimeter reach was, I would say, just a hair under what I might have preferred. Probably prefer something a little bit longer. Basically, to counter that, I moved the stem into the 49 millimeter reach as opposed to the 46 it came with. I also thought the bars were way too low out of the box. Leaving the stock bars on to compensate, I dropped the fork, I believe 5 mils in the crowns, which kind of kept it from the front wheel getting too away from me, but kind of helped it get a little bit higher up. Other than that, everything was kind of suspension based that I changed up.
Yeah, I just made sure the seat was low, but not too low. I tend to pinch with my knees and thighs, and I actually made a lot of contact on this particular saddle. I just made sure that my stack height was pretty low. I think I ran about 10 millimeters of stack. Like Jason, I thought the bars were a little low as well. I would have preferred to have just ran maybe 3 to 5 millimeters of stack and a taller rise. Suspension wise, I ran the fork pretty stiff and like heavy damping, heavy high speed compression, heavier low speed compression, and semi-quick rebound, and ran the shock a little bit softer. I'm working with some physical kind of nerve damage and things, so I've really adapted like soft, playful, functional rear suspension and a really stiff fork, and I just kind of sprawl out over the front end of a bike and really like beat the fork up as you'll see in the Huck to Flat.
I had trouble with this bike getting it kind of balanced for my liking. Counter to Grizz, where he's definitely a bit more like attack position, a bit more with the front. I definitely ride a bit more lazy looking, just kind of stood up in the bike, a bit more rear center. And I was having a lot of trouble not having the bike feel like it was kind of wallowing out and the front wheel getting away from me. It didn't feel like fork and shock were compressing at the same rate. So countering that, I ran, I believe 70 PSI on the fork, a little bit less than I usually would. And then I ran a little bit more PSI in the rear than even Grizz did, but for sag, it came out to be, I believe, 21 millimeters instead of the recommended 23. That got it to kind of raise the rear and be a bit more level for me. Other than that, as far as playing with dials, I run things a little bit more open than I say Grizz would in both rebound and compression. So a little bit faster. I ran the rear, the low speed compression a bit more close, a bit more damping to kind of keep it a little bit higher in the travel off the start. I also ran the low speed rebound a little bit faster to kind of keep it higher in the travel off the beginning. I pulled it apart just to see how many tokens came in it, and it had 2 of the orange clips, which I believe is stock. So if I added 2, I could probably drop my pressure a little bit more. If it's feeling a bit more support in the rear, probably go up in the front, because I'd rather have a bit more air in the front, be able to hit things harder, so. The grips were a little thin, I would say, for downhill riding. I think if you did a full summer, you'd probably have some pretty beat up palms by the end of it, but yeah.
For me, I like a 780 mil bar on everything I ride. The grips, yeah, for my preference, a little thin. That said, I actually do like the pattern. You know, for those of you that like a mushroom style grip, you're gonna like this. And there's a little bit of taper to the outside, so there's some good kind of attention to details. It's just too thin for my mitts. I guess if I was trying to race this bike, I'd consider running like kind of an insert, maybe a cush core in the rear, and just, I don't know, maybe I need it in the front too. I popped the tire on that Huck to Flat. But yeah, I run a, you know, 30 to 32 rear, 28, 29, as low as 27 in the front, if it's really, really extreme.
I think my go-to these days, if I don't have inserts, is like 26 in the rear, 24 in the front. I think that I probably could go up a little bit. It's just so dry, like our conditions are so loose that I kind of went down and then just kept that in the back of my head to not like hit rocks too hard, which, like, granted, everything held up fine regardless, so.
Oh, dope!
I didn't get on this and wished it had a bunch of flip chips to mess around with. It also has, you know, a straight 1.5 steer tube, so you could put, you know, different reach headsets in there if you felt like you needed to do so.
Yeah, I think that speaks to Pivot's confidence in what they've built. You know, personally, I got along great with this bike, so I wouldn't want to change anything, but I ride center forward. So riders that maybe ride more rearward, center rear, they're probably gonna want some adjustability to. I hardly notice I'm on wagon wheels. The Phoenix 29 is the first wagon wheel bike I've actually got along with and felt like I was riding it rather than it riding me. I didn't start buzzing my butt until I started getting really comfortable and attacking on this bike. But yeah, I like really like the mullet setup, and I don't feel the need to do that on this bike whatsoever. I was really happy with how this bike, for me, you know, being centered in it, I could just stay in the pocket and let the bike do the work, and it would hold the line really well. It's so light that it was easy to pick up and make little micro adjustments on trail. And then jumping, I was pleasantly surprised with how stable this bike is in the air considering how light it is.
I dig 29-inch wheeled bikes, downhill bikes being included. I think I have probably a little bit longer inseam, so I don't have to worry as much about it kind of the rear wheel jumping up at me. I think that's a thing I like about 29-inch downhill bikes, especially kind of like you're saying, where you really feel like you're kind of like sitting in the bike, which speaks a ton to like kind of how well this bike felt like it cornered and really like locked into arcs around turns. I mean, 36 pounds is pretty light for a downhill bike. Having the flexibility to maybe jump high into something or even get offline and, you know, redirect where you're going. I think in the same instance, I might prefer my like downhill race bike to be maybe feel a bit more like planted weight-wise.
I did jump onto like the Northwest Cup track at Tamarack, and there's these high-speed open ski run turns and a lot of just small bumps, just that whole high-frequency chatter. And that's where I realized that my suspension settings were terrible for that environment. Like Jason was saying, the light weight of the bike and the rollover capability of the big wheels, the bike would just get on these bumps and then just kind of start to like wiggle around on me. That was the only sense of like kind of squirming bike squirm that I got, was in that that high speed kind of ski turn. Yeah, so to change that, my approach would have been to open up low speed compression, soften it up, speed up low speed rebound as well on both shock and fork, to kind of get that you know, first 30% of travel to be very hyperactive, you know, and just really work with the terrain. And if that didn't work, I would start asking other peers for help.
What's your setting? I felt I think I was running my stuff a hair bit quicker in general already. Mm-hmm. So it felt like it was reacting quick enough to the stuff coming at it. Like I said before, having like the low speed compression in the rear a bit firmer to kind of keep the bike a little bit higher in the travel initially. I definitely felt that in those chatter bumps where it was just not like responding as quick, a little bit of like packing up. I liked how predictable this bike was. Like, it didn't do anything crazy, whether it was on like jump trails, like going off of a lip, and never did anything super wild. Same with just like really rough sections of trail. I think it goes again to like that kind of sitting in the bike, but it remained nice and composed, and I knew what it was going to kind of do. The rear end of me felt a little bit, like the suspension platform, I guess, felt a little bit kind of like linear as you go through the travel. Like I definitely had times like I'd land harsh off of things and you'd kind of like just go through the travel. I think again, adding a few of those like bottom out spacers would definitely compensate for that.
In my previous experiences with DW Link bikes, regardless of brand, I have noticed that they kind of, for me in my experience, they've blown through the last kind of 30 to 40% of travel. So I sort of set my shock up with that firm high-speed compression in anticipating that. And for me, you know, I bottomed this bike out, but it wasn't really harsh bottom outs. You know, travel would return to center pretty quickly, but again, predictably. Yeah, this bike just worked for me really exceptionally well everywhere, but my suspension settings just sucked on Tamarack's downhill track.
Like, this bike looks pretty bitchin'. Like, it's very clean and simple. Definitely a lot of effort was put to just like how the cables are routed, how they like dive in and out of the bike, especially if you're gonna spend a lot of money on a top end bike. The clean, simple lines and of all of it, I definitely enjoy.
I'll just quickly say, yeah, the only noise this bike gave us was a bit of chain rattle on the swing arm.
Because this is just like a smooth chain slap. The hype is like the ribbed or whooped out or whatever you want to call it. And this doesn't have it. Yeah, chain slap on a full carbon bike, there's definitely gonna be a little bit of like echo rattling, but it's easily solvable. where like the cables come out on the non-drive side, both come out and your shifter cable dives to the other side while your brake line stays on the same. They're tight in the frame, but they can kind of rattle against the outside of the frame where they are exposed for a moment. I had to ride it a few times and I was like, what is that noise? Because it wasn't the obvious chain slap and everything else was quiet.
I didn't notice that sound. I was probably giggling too much on this bike. I see, do you see that like metal shaving right there? All right, let's see if this does the trick. I mean, we're back, but got some damage going on here. Yeah, man, I guess this is the first Z derailleur I've had kind of act up on me like this. I don't know if this is a hanger flaw or what.
Least favorite, but more so things I would change if I picked this bike up on my own would be the cockpit. The adjustable stem is like a pretty cool feature, but to access your frontmost stem bolts, you need like a T-handle Allen. Like any multi-tool, any like your standard L-shaped tool like Allen key won't reach it.
Yeah, I'm right with Jason. I would swap out all of these parts. Bar, stem, taller rise, thicker grips, and agreed with Jason on the saddle. I mean, I developed bruises on the inside of my thighs from this thing in testing. The one thing the saddle has going for it is the wheel cutout here.
True.
There was no buzz in there, but what other options are there that has that cutout that's gonna not bruise my thigh? Whatever that choice is, that's what I need. Just high-speed rebound, right? High-speed rebound? Yeah. What a pain in the butt to reach. Really, Pivot, really? Could you make this any more difficult?
I don't know if I point fingers more at Pivot or at Fox because like...
Yeah, which came first, the frame or the Float X2?
I don't know, I got two fingers to point, so it doesn't really matter, but the solution is you take all your air pressure out. The problem I had is that when you put a 2 mil in there and you move it, it's super easy to get to where it just gets between clicks and you can't count where your adjuster's actually at. So I pulled air to count where we had it because I was like just guessing really.
Johnny Simonetti coached me on how to adjust that little clicker with a 2 mil Allen key, and if you have a long one, you can kind of get your clicks right, but you need the long L one so you can use both ends. Yeah, the cranks were great. I appreciate how stiff they are. Yeah, and I mean the chain ring is just forged, stamped metal. nothing special.
It's alloy.
It's alloy. It's a mixture of metals, which is kind of considering what you're paying for this bike. Like, we could ask for a better chain ring.
I mean, I'm a fan of aluminum cranks on downhill bikes because, not to say carbon cranks are like of a concern, but I've seen plenty of carbon cranks in downhill situations fail. So I've always ran aluminum cranks because I'd way rather bend a crank than snap an ankle. So
yeah, personally, I would definitely take a soft alloy wheel over a firm, stiff carbon hoop. The flex profile of these Sun Ringway wheels paired nicely with how stiff the chassis is, and especially the 40 too. So definitely did my best to ding them up, and I don't see any ding. So
these wheels have survived pretty well. On a downhill bike where you're going to be hitting things much harder, I'd rather a wheel that's probably going to bend in some situations versus cracking rims more often. Just the cost involved with that is quite a bit higher. I'll run a carbon wheel all day long in like a 120 trail bike.
This Float X2 air shock is my new favorite shock on planet Earth, for the record. This thing's amazing. And then I got to give a shout out to the Z drivetrain and brakes. It's just durable, kind of underrated. Yeah, give Z a try.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think you might add a few grams to your bike and you don't have any cool gold parts, but like if I was blindfold, I wouldn't know the difference between how Z performs compared to Saint. Like, it's very comparable. Oh my God. Oh, she goes. Who should be looking at the Phoenix 2.9 as their next downhill steed? For me, I think it's somebody who's gonna be wanting to race some, probably gonna do a handful of races through a season. They probably are gonna leave somewhere close to a chairlift and have access to like bike park trails, because this thing was a blast to ride on, you know, jumpy, bermy stuff, but definitely held its own in rough terrain. If I was gonna go out and buy my next downhill bike for racing only, I don't know if I would consider this as like my top choice. It kind of blurs the line being really good at kind of a lot of things, but maybe isn't as specific for downhill racing for myself.
Pretty much what Jason said. You're looking to go racing this summer. You got bike parks that you're trying to hit. You're comfortable on big wheels and you're comfortable on a platform that has no adjustability. You just trust what Pivot's got for you. If you're a set and forget kind of like in terms of tweaking your bike, this is the one. Yeah, this is on the affordable end of like baller. So
Totally.
yeah, this is a great bike.
The next tier up from this, basically you get DT Swiss aluminum wheels. So still on aluminum wheels, you're getting full Saint Grupo. I believe you're getting Race Face carbon cranks. And then you're getting Pivot's own carbon bars as well as a carbon seat post. And then the highest in pro build of theirs, which comes in at, I believe, just under 10 grand, is gonna be same as the build I just described, but basically you're swapping out the wheels and you're doing carbon Reynolds wheels. Basically 2 higher end tiers, the only difference between the 2 is carbon wheels. I really can't justify maybe spending the money for that because Z functions as it is, and that's kind of like the main thing. Same with the wheels, like the wheels work great, so.
Yeah. If I was to buy any of these bikes, I would buy this build and then upgrade as I can afford to.
Yeah. Yeah, as things maybe have to bet on you, but I don't really know what would go first. Everything's pretty bulletproof. It's
that
pretty
chain
rad.
ring.
That's
That chain ring's gonna go.
Worst part. Stupid chain ring.